This is Mike Scalzi from Lord Weird Slough Feg. You're listening to What's Metal. We started in 1990, and it's not very exciting. The beginning wasn't exciting, but we just started this band I was in another band that broke up, and we started this one. It's called it Slough Feg as a sort of... I don't know why, really, just because it sounded funny, and we weren't taking it very seriously, and we were trying to cover Judas Priest songs and stuff like that, and then we had some originals, and the whole Irish thing happened by mistake. I was just reading a lot of comic books, and I would just sit on my couch with an acoustic guitar and drink vodka and sort of try to make up silly little songs to entertain myself and the people around me, and then somehow we started taking them seriously. I don't know why, and then the next thing you know, we had these songs that were called Celtic metal that started out as just fun, sort of. And then people started to take it seriously in Germany for some weird reason. And so we started taking it seriously. Most serious things start out as a joke, So, but we got involved in the heavy metal underground 6 years after we started because that's an interesting thing. We didn't know anything about... A lot of people think they know every obscure metal band in the world, but they don't, because... There's there's bands who play punk shows and play whatever shows are available to them, especially in America, but in other places too. But especially in America in the 90s, there wasn't many metal bands, so it wasn't my first instinct to go find out where all the metal bands were in Europe, the small metal bands. I didn't think that was worth any while. I would go get shows, so we play every week at a club, at a bar. And then the bands that would play with us in the 90s were grunge bands, punk bands, mostly pretty shitty stuff, And we were playing this weird, epic metal is the only way you could describe it, really. And I never thought in a million years that 10 years later this stuff would be real popular, this type of music, I thought it would be just as obscure always, I mean, we wanted to be big and be rock stars and everything, but I didn't think that it would, not that, obviously, I thought that no one would take it seriously, and they didn't for about 6 years, and that's when metal started sort of coming back, and then we got involved in the European underground scene and blah 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 blah.
So I don't know if it's only a rumor, but I heard that members of the band played also in another group called Whipcraft, something like a Domina background band or something. Is that true?
No, it's true. Adrian plays in this band with his girlfriend where they whip people and stuff like that. Yeah. It's not a band, really. It's just a bunch of noise, really. But it's fun, I guess. Yeah.
Okay, so your debut got re-released now through Miskatonic Foundation. Where does that connection come from? Is it because you have been on tour with Solstice before, that you know Rich?
Yeah, that's why. Well, no, it's sort of... I know Rich. I go on tour with Solstice because I know Rich. It's just... We were going on tour on a small... couple shows with Sacred Steel in 1999 because I knew Garrett and Sacred Steel because when we did our first album for Dragonheart, we did our first album, we put it out ourselves, and it gained some notoriety in the underground or whatever through just different people who send things around, and Garrett Mutz from Sacred Steel got a hold of it and wrote me a letter. Then when I got on Dragonheart, we did an interview with the magazine Garrett used to write for. I can't remember, it was Underground Metal magazine, and then I talked to him on the phone to do the interview, and then he asked me if we were going to come over to Wacken just as spectators, and then he said, well, we're doing Wacken, we're doing some shows afterwards in a small tour, so he asked us to come over and play a couple shows on his tour, so we did. Then on his tour we met Rich Walker from Solstice, and then we went over to England and played with that same trip with Solstice. And then, we met each other through the German scene, sort of, actually. And then Rich decided we should all tour the next year, and, that's something, yeah.
So on your website, you're keeping your fans updated on the worst-case scenario that can happen to a metal fan, and that is hair thinning. So what is the status at the moment?
Well, I can't avoid this question because I brought it on myself. I thought it would be funny because it seems like most people... Metalheads have long hair, and if they start balding, they get very sensitive about it, and I am too. But I thought it would just be funny to acknowledge it because you see, if I talk about how I'm balding all the time and I'm losing my hair, then if I actually really go bald, then I can actually be bald, and have long hair and look stupid like some people. But then they'll say, well, at least he's not in denial, like it was Klaus Meine or someone who wear a hat. But okay, you want to know? I started using the over-the-counter hair treatment that you can buy very cheaply. It's called minoxidil, and as you can see, I'm not doing that bad. This was worse a while ago. You see, now it's bald a little, but it's receding, but it's worked. I'm serious, it's working. There's like little baby hairs on top of my head. It's kind of scary actually, but as my hair gets longer, it gets fuller. So hopefully, I won't have to, shave it or whatever.
Okay, so let's have a look into the future. Maybe still with long hair. No, regarding the new album, I think it's already recorded. You're in the mixing process. So what can we expect?
What can you expect? Well, does anybody really care? Okay, well, no, seriously. Well, let's see. It's recorded and it's not mixed at all. We're gonna mix it when we get home. It's been roughly mixed, but it's basically not mixed. It's different. Traveler is the last album, and it sounds very different, very very different than Traveler. There's more raw, sort of fast stuff that sounds like the first record we did and the second record we did. There's more of that. It's more raw. It's heavier. It's less slick, it's more sort of weird, eclectic, strange, sort of like classic what Slough Feg used to sound like more. We took a strange direction in Traveler because we wanted to do a concept album about science fiction, so it changed our sound a lot for that record. But then the new stuff, we're kind of going back and doing, every song sounds totally different. There's a couple more Celtic sounding songs, there's a couple mythological, weird, whatever, doomy songs. Then there's a couple acoustic songs and going into areas we haven't gone very much into before with acoustic guitar and singing, and they're not that loud and all that stuff.
So San Francisco is usually known for its thrash scene, Bay Area thrash and all that stuff. Yeah, it's true. But is there still a scene for that? And does it somehow mix with your kind of metal scene?
Well, yes, but there's not a scene. I mean, there's still a scene that accepts that kind of music, absolutely. But that scene's been over, as you know, for 15 years or so. When we first got there in 1990, some of the clubs were still open that those bands like Metallica and Slayer and all of Exodus came up in, but then they closed down about 91, 92, so that was the end of that. That was all over. But now with the new interest in old metal, and all that, some of those bands like Heathen and Death Angel and a bunch of them are back, able to draw crowds again, whereas in the 90s no one would give a shit about them, would make a joke about them. Yeah, we play with those bands. We've played shows with those, like the ones I just mentioned, and some of the old thrash bands that got back together. There are a couple new ones that sound like that. Not many. There's one or two. And then there's Hyrax keeps playing up there. They're from LA. They did some shows, and so it's slowly coming back from about 1998 till about now. The metal scene there has been slightly resurging, but to a point where some people are pretty excited now, and there's quite a few of them. It's nothing like it was in the 80s, I'm sure. I wasn't there in the 80s, but it's something like that, about maybe a quarter of that now, But that's better than what it was in the 90s,
So our show is called What's Metal? What does metal mean to you? Is it just kind of music? Can it be a form of lifestyle? Or?
Well, yeah, I suppose it is in a way. To me, it's more. Well, I always say this, and I don't know if a lot of people like it, especially in Germany, but I always say it's more rock and roll lifestyle. Like, you have to know your rock and roll to know your heavy metal, I think, because it came first. The most important stuff is the early stuff that came first, and that was rock and roll, Yeah, I'm all about heavy metal. I mean, I'd never say I wasn't, but I think that what it means to me is, I mean, maybe not the words heavy metal or bands that are just specifically heavy metal, but the whole field of sort of, to me, of hard rock and and metal and the lifestyle, not the lifestyle of drugs and partying and sex, although that has its place, but really the idea of the dedication to the creativeness of being. To me, it's about heavy metal means being in a band that travels and that brings what they do in one place where they live to the rest of the world if they can, or the rest of the country or whatever. And shares it with people, and that's to me that can be in all forms of music, you know what I mean? So to me, metal is about music, it's not as much about, it's about the social part of metal and meeting people and knowing, definitely about meeting new people all over the world and the camaraderie of it, but it has to be based firmly in the music, because I find a lot of people who are into heavy metal don't have very much discretion as listeners. They just like anything that's metal, and they don't care what it sounds like. Whereas to me, it's about having specific taste and being able to make your own individual kind of music, not just sounding like everyone else. To me, there'd be no point in being in a band that sounded just like every other band in Europe or in America or whatever, because it would, let's face it, you go to a festival now and most of the bands sound exactly the same, within the category. There's black metal, there's power metal, and all the bands in those categories usually sound exactly the same, most of them. And to me, that's not what metal's about at all. It's about expressing what you want to say through the medium of heavy metal. And some people have a real hard time saying what exactly they want to say. They don't know if there's anything specifically they want to say. Usually it's fight, honor, dragon, blah, 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 and that's considered heavy metal, but it's really not what I get out of it. What I get out of it is doing my own, making an idea of my own that no one else came up with, and then making a sound music, but the sound of the music that no one else came up with, and doing that. And it's not because I want people to I don't want people to think I'm special. It's because I want it doesn't excite me to play something unless it has a new feeling. You know what I mean? An interesting feeling. And that usually sounds different from what a lot of people want to play and what they want to hear. So that's why we're not on Nuclear Blast or Century Media.